Look, I know what you're doing. I know you're searching around for new horror games to play in 2025. So why don't you just stop and let me help you out? Here's a list of new horror games to play in 2025, from AAAs to indies, with just a few surprises along the way. Cronos: The New Dawn is the latest from horror-centric studio Bloober team. Off the heels of last year's spectacular Silent Hill 2 remake, Cronos is an original IP that merges together some incredible inspirations for a pretty rock-solid survival horror. If you were to take the convoluted time travel of Netflix's Dark, the over-the-shoulder tension of Resident Evil 2, and the body horror grossness of The Thing with the weightiness of Isaac Clarke's stomps from Dead Space, well, you have Cronos: The New Dawn. If you're into horror, this one is likely already on your radar. So let this be a friendly reminder if you're looking for something a little zany in the sci-fi narrative realm, aesthetically fresh, and a snappy 14 hours. If you want the curt take, Cronos is alright. I think it's a solid and serviceable horror game. No, it doesn't quite hit the same heights as other heavy hitters like the Resident Evil remakes, Dead Space, or Bloober's very own Silent Hill 2 remake. But I think its protagonist, the Traveler, and its hard-shelled narrative bring a new wrinkle to the genre in 2025 that feels fresh, even if the gameplay at times feels a little familiar. Eclipsium is a cosmic horror game that plays like a fever dream. It blends pixelated textures into a twisting and winding nightmarish world that consistently shifts and molds into something completely different. In just about 2 hours, Eclipsium is guaranteed to take you on a journey. And considering narrative isn't at the forefront for this one, it's the game's atmosphere and tone that really will push you, the wanderer, to find a woman. Also, the mixture of mediums and using full motion video like an actor's actual hands is always a plus in my book. There's no denying it. Heartworm is a PS1 survival horror through and through. While there's a lot of these style games floating around in the horror space at the moment, Heartworm isn't just another copycat. First, the creatures are fighting off, these mysterious TV static-like beings, aren't killed with guns, but with a film camera. This lays way to a subtle but original twist, as you'll find different parts for your camera that change the landscape of combat. Additionally, you don't use a flashlight like you would traditionally in other survival horror games, but instead rely on your camera's flash to temporarily light your surroundings, followed by the fleeting hum of a bulb going off. It is great. Unlike a lot of retro-inspired games in the space, Heartworm strikes a very good balance of being somewhere between classic Silent Hill and classic Resident Evil, and never leaning too far into one or the other. An open, sprawling, vacant suburb with logic-defying interior layouts is pure Silent Hill, while inventory management is scarce and intentional, with item-based logic puzzles leaning more to Resident Evil. Also, its controls and camera angles are customizable, making for an ideal playing experience, whether it's more modern or retro, or a mixture of the two, and that is something I dig. Hey, would you look at that? Another PS1-inspired horror game. Oh, and it just so happens to be another published by Dread XP, the same publisher as Heartworm. Don't worry, The Lacerator is a much different vibe than Heartworm. In Lacerator, you play as a famous adult film star, trapped in a gruesome dungeon where one wrong turn could set off a deadly, usually very bloody, booby trap that could take one of your limbs off. And then, yeah, well, you gotta deal with it. Losing limbs changes the paths you can play, and thus leads to multiple playthroughs with multiple endings. The Lacerator surely leans into grindhouse cinema, literally. Like Heartworm, you can choose to play this one either with fixed camera angles or over the shoulder, which, again, is great. Luto. No, this one is not a PS1-inspired game. Instead, it's PT-inspired. Yes, similar to PS1-style horror games, PT clones have become a genre of its own, from Layers of Fear to Visage and beyond. Luto, however, isn't your run-of-the-mill, looping, spooky house game. While it certainly is that, Luto separates itself from the bunch by way of self-awareness and some fourth-wall breaking moments more in line with Hideo Kojima's style of storytelling or even the Stanley Parable. In about 4 to 5 hours, Luto delivers an experience with some unexpected turns best witnessed for yourself. If you want the current take, the story kinda deviates from itself, which left me a little confused in what it wanted to say, if anything at all. But it still remains one of the better attempts at trying to carry on PT's legacy in one of the more original takes. And that makes it remarkable in my book. Look Outside is awesome. It's a NES-style RPG where something cosmic and horrible is happening outside, and whoever looks outside will morph into a grisly and disgusting creature. So, despite the game's name, looking outside is the last thing you want to do. The game will have you explore your apartment building and requires you to carefully manage your time, as sleeping is a vital part of keeping your sanity. Combat is turn-based, and I found it to actually be pretty challenging. While it is a pixel art retro-style looking game, the creature designs still managed to make my skin crawl at times. It's like if Sweet Home and Earthbound were combined into one, and is probably one of my top personal horror games of the year. So of all the games on this list, this one is probably the most family-friendly and light-hearted of the bunch. But don't let that fool you on the spook meter, because it still has its share of scares. The Midnight Walk is a handcrafted, and I mean literally handcrafted, dark fairy tale, where you, the burnt one, awaken in a dark and wonky world where you befriend Pop Boy and go on the Midnight Walk. Along that journey, you'll encounter terrifying creatures that'll see you hiding, shielding your eyes to overcome them, or using Pop Boy to light the darkness. This game is short and punchy, and probably is best described more like operating such as a poem, told in brevity, sometimes at a whisper, and other times with resounding grit. While it has a whimsy stop-motion charm, something like that of a Henry Selick movie, it, to me, sits more closely to Cartoon Network's Over the Garden Wall. It's creepy and scary, but still somehow cozy and warm feeling. Also, it's totally playable in VR for PC and PS5 VR. Additionally, if your headset has eye tracking, the game has mechanics that involve closing your eyes to fend off beasts, which also at times can change environments completely, and closing your eyes will also require you to listen more closely to find certain items in the environment. It is pretty neat. No, I'm Not a Human is the second game on this list about staying inside while something outside is seemingly changing or affecting people. I wonder what event could have inspired a string of games like that. Anyway, No, I'm Not a Human sees you posting up in your house as you're routinely visited by people roaming around outside, desperate to seek shelter from a world that is changing. You can let people in, or not, but if you do, that means you must interrogate them to know whether they are, in fact, human. It's one hell of a tension builder, especially since it'll have you peering into people's mouths and eyes to ensure that they are what they claim to be. It's also just got a great mixture of styles, all of which just give an unsettling vibe. If Silent Hill 2 Remake was a sign of the fog rolling back in for the series, then Silent Hill F is the siren's song wailing that it's here to stay. Look, I can talk about this game all day, so I'll spare you and just say that this is this year's quintessential horror game, regardless of whether or not you're at all familiar with the series. Silent Hill F is the most daring in the franchise, unabashed in its themes, tackling intense topics of gender roles, abuse, family drama, societal expectations, and does so with such grace and ferocity that it makes it one of the most admirable works of fiction I have experienced. Also, quick PSA, rolling the credits in 10 hours doesn't mean the game is done, as New Game Plus is essential to further understanding the story and all of its nuances. While I know it's tempting to just go online and watch all 5 of its endings, I at least encourage a full additional playthrough, as the moment-to-moment journey is vital. After all, the endings aren't just some binary choose this or that. There's a little bit more to it. Now hold on a second, this game isn't from 2025, and you're right, but I wanted to mention it because, as part of the GOG preservation program, Silent Hill 4 The Room is finally playable on modern operating systems with cut content reinserted back into the game. And because of that, I have been able to play it for the first time in our year 2025. and for the better, because it's wedged its way into being among my favorites in the series, nestled right next to Silent Hill 2 Remake and Silent Hill F. Also, of all the games on this list, this is actually the one that frightened me the most, with some of the creatures making me gasp seeing them for the first time. Additionally, like Silent Hill F, Silent Hill 4 is an outlier and isn't narratively tied to the other games, and for the better. Tormented Souls 2, which you can't play as of writing this video, but you will soon on October 23rd. In the meantime though, you can check out its predecessor. Tormented Souls has quickly climbed its way up to being a modern cult classic in the survival horror genre. This game has its share of grotesque monsters, a la The Suffering or Silent Hill, and in that way, it can come off a bit more derivative at times. But where Tormented Souls really shines for me is that its puzzle solving is genuinely quite innovative and often requires a bit more lateral thinking than insert missing item here or find shield key open locked door. Many items serve different scenarios and different use cases, and it all feels logical and intuitive. Narratively speaking, however, it leaves a lot to be desired and is much like its monsters, a bit derivative. But the game offers a unique enough design that I think it is worthy of checking out. True Fear Forsaken Souls Part 3. Woof! What a title! But, as the title implies, this is the third in a trilogy, and a trilogy I just so happen to love. Also, no, this isn't a survival horror, but instead a hidden object puzzle adventure game. Look, I love playing these kinds of games, and the True Fear trilogy are among the best. If you're into classic style puzzle games like Myst, these are like Myst Light, and aren't as convoluted or cryptic. Actually, if I can compare True Fear to anything on this list, it's like Silent Hill if there was no combat and it was just strictly puzzle solving and exploration. And there's actually some pretty genuine good scares thrown in the mix. Now look, if you just are looking for a night where you just want to chill out, maybe you don't want to fend for your life, and you just kind of want to explore a spooky environment, solve puzzles, then this is an excellent way to get a break from all the other scary, spooky horror stuff chasing around in other games. I recommend it. Okay, let me know what I missed in the comments, or if there's anything on this list that you hadn't heard of before that you plan to check out. All right, see you later. Stay safe.